In the final years of the 19th century and the dawn of the 20th, Europe stood like a grand stage dressed in elegance, yet hiding a storm beneath its curtains. It was an age of shining empires, where kings and emperors paraded their power through glittering courts and booming industries. The British Empire stretched across seas, its flag flying over lands so far that it was said the sun never set on its dominions. France clung proudly to its colonies in Africa and Asia, proclaiming its place as a republic of liberty, though deeply shaken by old wounds. Russia sprawled across two continents, a giant both admired and feared, its Tsar ruling with divine authority yet facing the grumblings of a restless population. Germany, newly united under the steel and blood of Bismarck's vision, stood young and ambitious, hungry to prove itself against the older empires. And Austria-Hungary, an ancient dynasty patched together from many nations, struggled to balance the ambitions of Hungarians, Czechs, Serbs, Croats, and more beneath the fading crown of the Habsburgs. Together these powers formed a Europe both dazzling and dangerous, a continent marching forward with the confidence of progress yet carrying the seeds of catastrophe. Nationalism was the fuel smoldering in the heart of Europe. It was not simply pride in one's country, it was identity turned into fire. In France, nationalism meant a fierce determination to recover Alsace and Lorraine, territories lost to Germany after the humiliating defeat of 1871. In Germany, nationalism was tied to strength, discipline, and the rise of industry that seemed to outpace its rivals. In Russia, nationalism mixed with pan-Slavic ideals, urging protection and leadership for all Slavic peoples, especially those living under Austrian rule in the Balkans. And in the Balkans themselves, nationalism was no whisper, it was a roar. Serbs dreamed of uniting all South Slavs into a single kingdom, a dream that clashed with Austria-Hungary's desire to keep its diverse empire intact. Croats, Bosnians, Bulgarians, and Romanians each carried visions of sovereignty, their passions pulling the region into constant turmoil. These ideas, noble in spirit but explosive in effect, created a continent where every border felt like a question mark and every neighbor a potential foe. Yet nationalism was only one thread in the web. Imperialism, the race for colonies, stretched the rivalries beyond Europe into Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Britain guarded its trade routes with a navy unmatched in history, controlling choke points like Gibraltar, Suez, and Singapore. France, seeking to rebuild its prestige after past defeats, claimed vast territories across West and North Africa. Germany, late to the scramble, demanded its place in the sun, seizing territories in Africa and the Pacific, though never satisfied with what it received. The Ottoman Empire, once mighty, now called the sick man of Europe, was fading, leaving a vacuum in the Balkans and the Middle East that other powers rushed to fill. Every colony, every railroad, every coaling station overseas was more than land, it was prestige, leverage, and in the minds of leaders, survival. Thus, the competition overseas sharpened the tensions at home, feeding suspicion that rivals were plotting not just to expand but to strangle one another. The alliances formed in this age were meant as shields, but in truth, they became chains. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy formed the Triple Alliance, a pact promising support if attacked. France, desperate not to stand alone against a powerful Germany, reached across old animosities to ally with Russia, creating the Franco-Russian alliance. Britain, at first clinging to its splendid isolation, eventually joined France in the Entente Cordiale, and later Russia, forming the Triple Entente. To the rulers and ministers of the time, these alliances offered security, a guarantee that no power could be bullied or isolated. But the reality was darker. If one nation stumbled into conflict, its allies would be dragged along, turning sparks into infernos. It was like a room filled with loaded guns, where each hand rested too lightly on the trigger. Behind the political stage, technology and industry were reshaping war itself. The railways could move entire armies in days instead of weeks. Factories that once made tools and textiles now forged steel battleships, artillery that could shatter cities, and machine guns capable of mowing down men by the hundreds. Planners dreamed of swift campaigns using modern weapons, not realizing they were preparing a future of slaughter on a scale unimaginable. The German General Staff drew up plans for lightning strikes into France through Belgium. The French built their defenses around the dream of reclaiming Alsace-Lorraine. Russia relied on its vast manpower, while Britain trusted its navy to keep the island nation safe. The world had not yet seen the horrors these machines could unleash, and leaders, too confident in old visions of glory, imagined that the next war would be short, decisive, and perhaps even cleansing. None foresaw that it would consume an entire generation. Amid this dangerous atmosphere, diplomacy became a fragile performance. Crises flared up like sparks on dry grass: the Fashoda incident between Britain and France in Africa, the Moroccan crises between France and Germany, the Balkan Wars where new nations carved independence from Ottoman lands. Each time, war seemed possible, yet each time diplomacy pulled Europe back from the brink. To many, this proved that Europe was too civilized to destroy itself, that the nations, though proud and fierce, would never risk everything. But to others, each crisis showed how close the world already stood to the edge of the abyss. Every insult, every border dispute, every assassination attempt carried the chance of unleashing the storm that everyone feared yet secretly expected. And so, on the eve of the First World War, Europe appeared both triumphant and fragile. Its cities glowed with electric light, its streets filled with automobiles, its skies touched by the first airplanes. Artists painted, poets wrote, scientists discovered. The future seemed bright, even unstoppable. Yet behind that brilliance lay rivalries, grudges, and ambitions that no diplomacy could truly silence. The empires believed themselves strong, but they were brittle. The alliances promised peace, but they bound nations together for war. Nationalism gave people pride, but it also sharpened the knife of hatred. The world was walking toward catastrophe, unaware that the smallest spark, the shot of a pistol in Sarajevo, would soon ignite a fire that would consume millions. The stage was set, the actors ready, and history waited for its curtain to rise.